On June 19, 2009, a man found a body on the beach and identified him as Peter Bergmann. At first glance, it appeared that the man had gone for a swim and drowned, but they soon discovered a disturbing mystery that has never been solved.
That he used a false name, he certainly used a false address to a male of that name, fitting that description or that age profile. No record in any of those locations of a Peter Bergmann.
This is a case of a man with no identity and no past. These are the final days of Peter Bergmann. During the morning of Tuesday, June 19, 2009, a resident of the town of Sligo, Ireland, together with his son, went for a walk on the beach.
Something in a shop window like a mannequin that was in the sand, and of course as I got closer I realised it was actually a person and that he seemed to have drowned.
The police arrived on the scene. The body was naked and his clothes were scattered on the shore. As he inquired as to who the man was, things got strange. There was no documentation of any kind of the clothing to confirm his identity, and stranger still, all the tags on his clothes, even those of his underwear, were cut off with scissors. Bergmann's last days were made known thanks to the extensive CCTV surveillance cameras in Sligo and the Sligo City Hotel, where he stayed for 4 days. The footage shows that Bergmann left the hotel at least 13 times with a full purple plastic bag, but each time he returned with an empty bag. What was in that purple bag? What was this man doing in a small Irish town? And why hasn't anyone asked about him? This is the chronology of Bergmann's last days. The town of Sligo is tucked away in the northeast of Ireland, looking out over the North Atlantic Ocean. Tourists in the town are rare, and the outsiders who visit for the purpose of death are even more unusual. Cameras captured the journey of Peter Bergmann, from the bus station until he arrived at the hotel in the center of town. On June 12, 2009, Peter checked into the Sligo City Hotel. His stay would be brief, and he would stay there until June 16, 2009. Peter walked purposefully into his accommodation. He didn't have a reservation. He just walked in the door and asked for accommodation.
He would have filled out his reservation form. We would have asked him for some details, his name, his address, and that he wanted to book the room for 3 nights.
The city was small, so no one asked for his ID. Later, it turned out that the address he gave on the booking form did not exist. Peter made the booking successfully and paid the amount with cash in advance. Therefore, there is no record of any credit card associated with his name, and there is no passport either. There is no record of any Peter Bergmann anywhere in the world. Peter was a familiar face to the people who worked at the hotel. He would come down for his breakfast at 8:30 in the morning and then return to his room. The man always carried a purple plastic bag with him every time he left the hotel to tour Sligo town. However, when he returned, he would come back empty-handed. Tuesday, June 13th. Peter went to the Sligo post office, where he bought 8 stamps and several airmail labels. But they were never able to establish to whom they were sent. One of the people who worked at the hotel cleaning the room couldn't get into Bergmann's room, so she asked the manager for help. Peter was there.
So I went to the room that day and I knocked and I got no reply. So I opened the door and I went in, and as I walked in, I knew I startled him. He was just standing inside the door from us. Remember, it was kind of like he froze and he looked at me. It was nearly like as if I caught him doing something that he shouldn't have been.
The rest of the day was uneventful, except that every time Peter left the hotel, he was always with his purple bag full, and as we all know, when he came back empty-handed. What did Bergmann get rid of every time he left the hotel? Around 11 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, June 14th, Peter took a taxi and asked the driver where there was a quiet beach to go swimming. They made their way to Rose's Point Beach, which was about a 15-minute drive from the city taxi rank. Peter got out of the car and looked out to sea. He seemed content, but instead of staying, he got back into the taxi and asked for a lift back to Sligo. Peter seemed to be a reserved and shy man. We know he sent letters to someone, so police believe he had friends and family somewhere in the world. At the hotel, Peter did not interact with anyone. He was alone and didn't talk to other residents. Here we see a clear intention that Peter did indeed want to communicate with someone. However, something we don't yet know what stopped him. Peter was also constantly leaving the hotel, so it was very difficult to keep track of him. The only constant thing was his multiple exits from the enclosure along with his purple plastic bag.
It was quite clear that he was disposing of items of personal property. We would have done extensive searches throughout Sligo, be it rubbish bins, public areas, gardens of properties, private properties, car parks. We even searched the local dump.
In Sligo, there were security cameras in almost every corner of the city. The police say Peter identified all the spots with cameras, because if he hadn't, they would certainly have found the personal items he disposed of. However, he made sure he went to great lengths to ensure they never found any of his belongings. On Monday, June the 15th, Peter requested a late checkout from the hotel so that he could stay an extra hour or two, mentioning that he had things he had left to do. After that request, Bergmann shows up again with the purple bag and 2 other bags. Peter leaves his room key at reception, leaves the hotel, and heads for the bus station. But on the way, he gets rid of one of the bags he was carrying. When he arrives at the bus station, he only has 2 bags. At the station, he went to a shop, ordered a cappuccino and a sandwich, and sat down to write something which he subsequently tore up and threw into a waste bin. Peter bought a one-way ticket, caught the bus, and headed back to Rose's Point at 2:20 in the afternoon, the same beach where he had been for brief minutes the day before. 16 people saw Bergmann on the beach that afternoon. It was clear that Peter was not trying to hide.
He was walking parallel to the water with his bare feet, with his ankle deep in the water, and he just seemed to be kind of a bit stooped with his hands behind his back as if he was in another world.
He had grey hair, black leather jacket, pale enough skin. He didn't really say anything to us. We said hello to him. He nodded back.
These people were unaware that they were witnessing the mysterious man's last hours until early the next morning when Peter was found.
The fog was beginning to lift, and I noticed something from a shop window like a mannequin that was in the sand. And of course, as I got closer, I realised it was actually a person, and that he seemed to have drowned. We said the little prayer, and it brought a little bit of serenity or calmness to the situation.
The police removed Peter's naked body, and his clothes were scattered on the shore of the beach. His pockets were empty. There was no money or any kind of identification. His clothes did not have a single label on them. Bergmann had planned everything to a level of detail so that he could never be identified. When the body was examined, there were no signs of a struggle, and the involvement of third parties was ruled out. They found no evidence of any external injuries, and the cause of death was drowning. The man's teeth were in perfect condition for his age. However, what caught the attention of the doctors was the state of his body, which looked deteriorated. When the rest of the medical examinations were carried out, they did find something.
We found that he has extensive cancer of his prostate, and he had tumour in his bone. There were other findings. There was evidence of previous heart attacks.
Peter was also missing a kidney. The toxicology report showed no traces of any drugs in his system, despite the intensity of the pain he must have suffered in his condition. The police checked that his home was located in Austria and found it to be a vacant lot. while inquiries did not reveal any Peter Bergmann who matched the man's description. When a disappearance is reported, it is common to see his family members and people around him expressing their concern. Posters are printed, search campaigns are organized, and efforts are coordinated. However, in the case of Peter Bergmann, there are no known loved ones, there was no missing persons report, and there never has been. His illness was terminal, and he wanted to leave this world, and so he did, with complex premeditation. His bones and heart harbored a death sentence, but he alone would decide how long he had to live. The police were also unable to find Peter Bergmann's name on the list of people who entered the UK legally. It appeared that Bergmann had written his final sentence in Sligo, a quiet small town full of peace, while he was a man who wandered in solitude. The man who spent his last days as Peter Bergmann was never identified.